Hey friends, it's Just the Gems. I'm Brandon Claus. Santa Gems. I don't have a name that lends itself well to Christmas puns. Anyway, if I haven't mentioned it before, then I should tell you that Christmas is pretty much my favorite time of year. I'd like to say something high-minded here, like how Christmas is the time where we all try and remember to be kind to one another, but I think it actually started when I was a kid and my mom would spoil the crap out of me at Christmas time, so, you know, key memories formed from that, and now I'm just super into Christmas. Now, I don't know about you, but I was a Santa believer until I was in 2nd grade. Unless you're a very young kid watching this, in which case I'm a Santa believer to this very day. But one thing I never got about Santa was his whole nice list, naughty list thing. Like, if you're naughty, you get a lump of coal? That just seems super passive aggressive. But I guess when you have millions of kids to visit in a single night, you don't have time to come up with creative or more direct punishments. Anyway, this is a JRPG channel, so let's talk about JRPGs. What I have here are 2 lists, much like the big red guy himself. I have 3 JRPGs that have earned their place on the nice list, but I also have 3 JRPGs that are getting that proverbial lump of coal. What will they be? Well, unless you cheat and look in the description, then you'll just have to wait and see. But before we dive into it, would you consider liking the video and subscribing? It might be a pipe dream, but if I could hit 6,000 subscribers before the year ends, I would be just the happiest of campers. Seriously, they would have to call my mom to come pick me up early because I would just be too happy to finish crafting my wallet with the other campers. Super happy. And please let me know which games were on your naughty and nice list this year, especially the naughty list. Spill the tea, sis. Okay, maybe you unsubscribed just now because I said that. I understand. I regret it, but I can't take it back. Moving on. I've been a Xeno fan since the very beginning, since I saw this ad in an issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly and absolutely fell in love with Xenogears. Yes, before I even played it, I knew I would love it. Xenogears represented for me an incredible, evolution of video game storytelling. This had everything that a teenage Brandon could have wanted. Giant mechs, incredible characters, fluffy pink balls of fur with speech impediments. It's amazing front to back. It's my 2nd favorite game of all time, behind only Chrono Trigger. I followed the series as it's evolved through each new entry. The Xenosaga games were Xeno series creator Tetsuya Takahashi's chance to recreate the Xenogears storyline from the ground up, telling the epic 6-part story in order instead of jumping around Star Wars style. And for a couple of years there, it seemed like he might actually pull it off. That is, until the first episode underperformed and the 6-episode series was cut down to 3. A little bit of my childhood died then. A small part of me that believed in something burned away in the fires of capitalism. Anyway, flash forward to the future and to the Xenoblade Chronicles series. I've never been a fan of the Chronicles they stuck on there for the West. I'm just gonna call it Xenoblade if that's okay. So, the Xenoblade series. Now, from the get-go, it was pretty clear that this was more of a hard reboot of Takahashi's series. It didn't even really feel right to think of it as a reboot, exactly. More like he was creating a brand new series and just sticking Xeno on the front in order to signal to his fans that this was his creation. That's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. There weren't choo-choos, but there were no puns, so you could basically see the thematic threads there. Look, to talk about this, I'm gonna have to spoil Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed DLC, so if you're worried about that, please skip ahead to the next chapter of the video. If you are skipping ahead, I'll quickly summarize my spoiler-free point, which is Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed blew my mind in ways that I didn't think video games still could. There. Now you know that I loved it, so you can go ahead. Go on. Okay. For the rest of you, I'll share a bit more. As I played the original Xenoblade, I had a thought. I thought, I wonder if this is the planet Earth that was left behind before Xenosaga Episode 1 began, the planet Earth that they returned to at the end of Xenosaga Episode 3. But then I thought, nah, that couldn't be. Right? Then I got to the end of Xenoblade and I saw the flashbacks to the stuff with the scientists, the conduit, you know, all that stuff that for the casual Xenoblade fan must have felt like, what are they talking about? And then I thought, yeah, I'm 100% right. And then the game ended and I didn't see Cosmos anywhere, so I figured, okay, maybe I was wrong. And then Xenoblade 2 came and went and I decided that my theory was just going to be headcanon. It was my headcanon. But then the freaking DLC of freaking Xenoblade 3 just goes and makes it actual canon. Turns out I was right all along. I was basically bursting at the seams after the reveal happened, and I just had to talk about it with somebody. That somebody was my wife because she was there, but sadly she had no idea what I was talking about. Anyway, point is, for blowing my mind in the biggest way a game has in years, Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed has earned its spot on the nice list. I should take this moment to point out that a game showing up on the naughty list does not mean it's a bad game. It just means it did something so bad, so egregious, that I have no choice but to reward it with a chunk of the dirtiest form of energy we have. So having provided all of you reasonable folks with that caveat, let's talk about the Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters. It should go without saying that I'm a fan of physical media. You can look around at my shelves or listen to me wax poetic about my Trails Collector's Editions, and that should probably convince you. I love me some physical games. And if you're watching this, I would say there's a better than zero chance that you like physical media too. And an even surer guess would be that you love JRPGs and that you love Final Fantasy. So it would stand to reason that you would probably like to have a nice physical copy of the Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters. Well, unless you happen to be awake at like 1 in the morning on some random winter night, then it seemed you weren't getting one. Now, I have no joy in revealing that completely randomly I was awake at like 1 in the morning on that random winter night, so I did secure a pre-order. I actually had no idea there was any controversy at all until the next day when I learned that almost none of my friends have been able to get one. That is crazy to me. Square Enix is a massive company with a market research division, I'm sure. They had to have had some idea of the demand. They had to have known that scalpers would be flexing their gnarled fingers over their mice, ready to grab 10 copies to sell for 10 times the MSRP. They had to have known how this was going to go. But still, they dropped the pre-orders in the middle of the night, dusted off their hands, and walked away. There was something of a silver lining to the whole story because Video Games Plus and PlayAsia did receive copies of the game that those unlucky people were able to grab, albeit not the standard North American version, but the Asian English version. So, all's well that ends well, right? Square Enix is off the hook? No! This is such a weirdly anti-consumer practice, and I have to hope that Square Enix learned a lesson from this. Don't treat your fans that way, guys. Respect the physical collectors, and they'll keep you in business a long time. The Final Fantasy series has been going through an identity crisis for the last, 15 years. Ever since the 10th entry stepped lightly away from the traditional active time battle system of the majority of its predecessors, it hasn't just changed its story and world with each game, it's changed the game entirely. Final Fantasy XI was an MMO. 12 was a single-player MMO-esque game set in a pre-existing fantasy world for the first and only time. 13 called its battle system the Command Synergy battle system, which is not as pleasing to the ears as active time battle. And on top of that, a lot of people hated it because it was too linear? I don't know, I thought it was okay. And then 14 was an MMO again, except it was really bad at first, and now it's really good. And 15, which I love, by the way, don't at me, but 15 was divisive because of its storytelling technique and its pacing issues, while having once again a completely different battle system than its predecessors, flirting pretty intensely with action combat for the first time. So when 16 threw its hands in the air and said, forget it, we're an action game now, well, a lot of Final Fantasy stalwarts revolted. They could tolerate MMOs and command synergies and whatever 15's battle system was called. But this sort of devil-may-cry action thing, this was a bridge too far. Now look, I would never tell you how to feel about anything, let alone a game. But I've been a Final Fantasy fan for most of my life, and having played Final Fantasy XVI, I will tell you that this game entertained me, moved me, and made me excited for the future of this series. Final Fantasy XVI is a full-on action game, it's true. And it wouldn't shock me if they just did away with experience points and potions for the next one. Would I be a little bummed about that? Maybe. I guess I probably would be. But that's what it means to grow. When we move on to a new phase of our lives, there's always a bit of sadness at what we're leaving behind. Whether that's moving out of the house to go to school, or graduating from school and starting the longest and most soul-sucking part of our lives, we feel friggin' wistful. And that's how I feel about Final Fantasy in general, and 16 specifically. I play Final Fantasy XVI and hear the musical cues from the series that I love so much. I ride a chocobo, I fight a Marlboro. I don't care if they retranslate it as Morble in 16, it will always be the cigarette squid to me. But seeing those familiar things in this new setting and this new type of game makes me feel wistful. Not sad exactly, but like I'm graduating and taking everything I learned from the previous games and looking at this new world through the lens they've given me. So I guess that means I welcome whatever changes Final Fantasy has in store in the future. And I kind of wonder if I'll look back on these more recent entries when I'm an old man with that same sort of wistfulness. Okay, when I'm an even older man. I know I'm old. I'm getting canceled, aren't I? This is where the community straight up cancels me. Whatever, it's fine. Put on a brave face. You can do this. Octopath Traveler 2 is everything I wish Octopath Traveler 1 had been. Does that make it sound like maybe this game shouldn't be on the naughty list? Well, if a game's inclusion on the naughty list required it to be a bad game, then none of these games would be on the naughty list. No, this game is on the naughty list because it chose to make the first game all over again. Personally, I loved Octopath Traveler, and I think Octopath Traveler 2 iterates on it in such a way that it really captures the promise of this series. But they stuck a little too closely to the outline so that the game feels like almost a tracing of the first. You have the same character classes to start. Oh, except some of them are gender swapped. Is it reading too much into it to suggest that the two jobs that stick with the same genders as Octopath 1 is saying something about the attitudes of the writers? Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, we could have started with 8 new jobs and picked up the classics later on. Then you have environments that stick super closely to the original as well. Yes, there are some different biomes, but 80% of this game could have been lifted straight from the original. And even the music, the glorious music, the beautiful Yasunori Nishiki music, even the music falls into this pattern of sameness. The battle themes all start out the same and have the same feel as their equivalent in the original. Even the religious city uses the exact same bridge as the previous games, despite there not being any actual connection between the places at all. I'm all in on series using some common themes throughout, but this doesn't feel to me the way Final Fantasy or Chrono themes feel, and that bugs me. Beyond the straight carbon copying of elements, the new bits feel like too little too late. The disconnectedness of the characters' stories is corrected, but this isn't something that should have been a problem to begin with. They knew people were going to have a problem with that in the first game. So rather than take the lessons learned from the original and craft a wholly unique experience for the sequel, they remade the original and hot glued the new pieces onto it. Anyway, all that being said, I think Octopath Traveler 2 is brilliant and it's truly a great JRPG and worthy of the praise. But I haven't heard anyone griping about these things that have been bugging me since I got it, and I just had to get that off my chest. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. For those of you who are too young to remember it, or weren't even born yet, good God. It's so weird being middle-aged on the internet. Anyway, if you weren't conscious of the Super Nintendo's heyday, then it might be hard to understand what a special time that was to be a JRPG fan. The genre was still pretty new. Heck, video games were still pretty new. And developers were still learning as they went. Square was the king and queen and high priest of RPGs back then, and any time they put out a new game, I was first in line to get it. Or I guess, actually, I was first in line to ask my parents for it for my birthday or whatever, because I was a kid and I didn't have any money. The latter half of the Super Nintendo's life hit us with so many freaking awesome games from Square, like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy III. Yes, I know it's 6, stop typing your comment. But one JRPG that none of us could have ever seen coming was Super Mario RPG. What an insane idea. Mario, the 2D platformer with the paper thinnest of plots, was going to be an RPG, and Square was going to make it. And look, I won't pretend like the resulting game was the perfect JRPG experience. It was a goofy and over-the-top story, almost a parody of JRPGs in some ways, but it was so incredibly fun and charming that I couldn't help but love it. The battles were super engaging because for the first time ever, you had to use timing to get the most out of your attacks. The time button presses alone were just so innovative, but beyond that, there were a ton of cool locations to explore, and the new characters that we got to meet, especially Geno and Mallow, were just so awesome. See, this was back before Shigeru Miyamoto made his decree that no Mario game should have any characters in it that aren't already established in the Mario universe, which is why the party members of every Paper Mario game have just been like Goombas and Koopa Troopas. Square was able to flex its creative muscles here, and it showed. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned the soundtrack by Yoko Shimomura. She is just fantastic, and the music in this game is so freaking catchy. This was a dream team matchup of talents. So Mario RPG was a fun but brief chapter of my JRPG loving life, and I was glad to have it. But I also figured that chapter was well and truly closed. Then Nintendo blew my mind by announcing a full-on remake for the Switch. And what a remake this sucker is. It seems tailor-made to appeal to people who get angry about any changes made to a game in a remake. Other than a couple of small additions to the battle system, this is the exact same game we loved back in the 90s, just with a gorgeous coat of Switch-based paint to freshen it up. It's amazing playing this game now to see just how forward-thinking the developers of this game were. They didn't have to update much to make this feel just as charming and outright playable as it did back then. This game makes the nice list for making me feel like a kid again. Something I had previously thought only a disapproving look from my parents could do to me. But by staying so faithful to the original, in this case, I'm reminded of both my own childhood and just how incredibly fun this hobby is. The Switch is definitely going down in history as the best console Nintendo has made to this point, and it's games like Super Mario RPG that really solidify that fact for me. I'm not going to talk about how much I love Crystar, the predecessor to Crymachina. If you spent any time on my channel, you're probably sick of hearing me talk about it. We get it, you're saying. You love Crystar. That's true, and thank you for acknowledging it. I feel very seen right now. So yeah, I was super pumped that Fudia was putting out another game in this series. I wouldn't say sequel exactly, but it's definitely a spiritual successor if nothing else. And what Crymachina does right, it does very right. There were some prominent issues in Crystar, like combat that felt super stiff and not all that exciting. Crymachina takes a cybernetic buzzsaw to that stiff combat and turns it into something fast and fluid and full of energy. The music, which was a highlight of the original, is equally great here, and the graphics have seen a pretty nice next-gen bump in quality. Even if the environments that you play in are not exactly the most varied or interesting on their own. Okay, you're thinking, so why is this game on the naughty list? Don't tell me you're gonna pick one stupid thing that bugs you and make a whole big deal out of it. Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. One of the things I loved the most about Crystar were the vocal performances from the English actors. The cast did so much to bring those characters to life, and without those characters being portrayed the way they were, the story just wouldn't have had the same oomph for me. So when I started up Crymachina and I heard a timid-sounding Japanese woman say something I didn't understand on the title screen, my stomach dropped. Was it possible? Could it possibly be that they would give this game such a massive downgrade when everything else seems to be stacked in its favor? It's possible. It's probable even. It actually just straight up happened. There's no English voiceover for the Western release of Crymachina. I frantically pored over the menus once I got into the game proper, hoping in vain that there was some option to switch the VO to English, that maybe some overzealous localization employee was trying to make a statement that subs were morally superior to dubs by setting the subtitle Japanese as default. But there's just no English voiceover. Now look, I won't not play a game I'm looking forward to because there's no English voiceover, but it definitely hurts. And it hurts in a game like Crymachina even more than some others because a large portion of the dialogue happens during gameplay. Meaning, while all that fast and fluid and energetic action is happening, the characters are talking and the storyline is developing. And I have no chance of being able to both read the subtitles in the corner of the screen and win the battle. I only read some of the dialogue on screen right now for the first time as I was editing my first impressions video of this game a couple months ago. That's how entirely I missed it. Plus, on occasion a character will say something in Japanese and there's just no subtitles at all. Like, I get that it's probably not something super important, but still. So for not fully localizing the game, Crymachina lands on the naughty list. Of course, there's still time to make it right. A dub production and an update patch is possible. Do I think it's likely? Well, no. But it's Christmas time, and if I can't make a wish at Christmas time, then what's even the point? All right, there you have it, my JRPG naughty and nice list for this year. What do you think? Would you have made some of the same calls I did? If not, what games would you have put on your lists? Let me know down in the comments. Let's chat about it. Once again, if you like the video so YouTube will tell people to watch this, I'd really appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed, it would mean a lot to me if you would. Anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.